Welcome to another Worship Wednesday. I'm going to change things up a bit here over the next few months. If you are around ECC and watching because you're part of the praise team or part of our church, you know that we are going through the book of Luke this fall and into the winter. And one of the things that we are doing is about a chapter a week. So I'm going to be a few weeks behind what we're preaching about, but we're going to jump into Luke chapter 3. And basically, I'm going to hit a chapter every week and just share some thoughts maybe that weren't in the sermon or just some additional thoughts. And in Luke chapter 3, Byron preached this a few weeks ago, and it's Jesus' baptism. And in Luke 3, it says, when all the people were being baptized, Jesus was baptized too. And he was praying, heaven was opened, and the Holy Spirit descended on him in bodily form like a dove. And a voice came from heaven, "You are my son, whom I love. With you I am well pleased." Now, different authors talk about Jesus' baptism, and I just want to talk really quickly this morning about baptism and the importance of baptism. It is interesting that Jesus did not perform any miracles until his baptism, or none that we know of. The gospel writers, talk about some things that happened when he was 12 teaching in the temple, but we don't see any miracles. We don't see anything crazy happen in Jesus' life, at least written, documented, until his baptism, and he receives the Holy Spirit. And I think that's really important because sometimes, as Byron has shared, we view Jesus as Superman. We view him as, yes, he is fully human and he's fully divine, but we forget that human piece. And in Philippians 2, it talks about Jesus emptying himself. He emptied himself of his divinity, but then when he's baptized, we see the Holy Spirit come on him. And at that point, he goes and starts becoming a rabbi, a teacher, and he performs miracles and casts out demons and heals people. But that doesn't happen until he receives the Holy Spirit at baptism. And I do want to point you to a book that's really been helpful for me, Waters of Creation by Doug Van Dorn. And he goes through and talks about baptism and starts at Genesis chapter 1 and goes through the baptism of Jesus and what that means for us as Christians who are baptized. I just want to read a few of the things that he talks about and encourage you to really push in. And even if you've grown up in a church, in a community that teaches immersion and baptism, this book has been really helpful for me. And he goes through and talks about the types. There are types all through the Old Testament that point to the baptism of Jesus. It talks about the tabernacle and the temple, even heaven and earth, Genesis 1, and how there's this water creating chaos over the earth, and then God speaks and gives purpose to this earth and starts the creation process. The Garden of Eden, he goes through and talks about the ark and the flood, and then the Ark of the Covenant, the Sinai, Mount Sinai, and receiving the words from God on Mount Sinai, crossing over into the Promised Land and going across the Jordan, that baptism. He goes through and really talks really in depth about the flood, the Red Sea, and then Jesus' baptism, all pointing back to the creation story. And then I love what he talks about in part 3. It's baptism and priesthood. And it's interesting that at the age of 30, which was Jesus' age, priests went through a baptism type service, a cleaning ceremony, a baptism of sorts, a type of baptism. And at 30, Jesus is also baptized, basically declaring to the world and to the supernatural beings, the spiritual realm, that he's ready to start his priesthood. And we realize and recognize that unlike the priests of the Old Testament, Jesus is the perfect priest. And he doesn't give sacrifices. He doesn't kill animals. He is the sacrifice for us. And just the importance of Jesus' baptism, saying the priesthood starts now. And that was at the age of 30, the same age as priests in the Old Testament. He goes on and talks about baptism and the covenant and declaring the covenant not just now for Israel, but at Jesus' baptism, as Byron's going to talk about here in a few weeks, the importance of the covenant for Gentiles as well. And then he ends with the importance of Christian baptism. So would encourage you, if you have questions about baptism, to reach out to me, to reach out to Byron, or dig in to Doug Van Dorn's Waters of Creation, a biblical theological study of baptism. I just encourage you to continue to reading along with us, studying the life of Jesus through Luke. Encourage you to read through Luke 3, and if you have any questions or comments, share those with me either through email or here on the YouTube channel. Thanks and have a good day. Shalom.